Um, all right. So, what's your Smultronställe? That wild strawberry feeling. When my colleagues asked me via an email how far I wanted to live from workplace, I simply replied, "Where grow the wild strawberries?" For me, Sweden was synonymous with that oft talked about movie, Wild Strawberries. Everyone knows strawberries. Most of us who grew up in urban areas bought strawberries in stores. Sometimes, if sticky red juice from overripe strawberries stained our hands when we put them in our baskets, they were sure to leave their mark on our fingers that delighted our olfactory lobes. But what were these wild strawberries that Bergen had titled one of his most famous films after? Were they just as sweet as store bought ones? Smultron is a Swedish word for wild strawberries, but it sounds nothing like Swedish word for strawberry, jordgubbe. Jord meaning earth and gubbe meaning a little lump. Smultronställe, the original Swedish title for wild strawberries, means a place where wild strawberries grow. Only it's not just a place, it's a feeling. Wiki defines it as a word for place or a period of time when you feel joy and well being. For example, it could be a cottage by the lake. It can also refer to a place where smultrons grow abundantly. Wild strawberries are fine bead like pea sized berries that perfume the Swedish summer. The flowers of wild strawberries are white before they magically turn into glorious red. And smultron's sweetly aromatic taste is quite unique. It's hard to describe. Like the taste of a mango, it's a feeling. When ripe wild strawberries melt in your hands, they melt in your hands before you can taste them. You carry the smell the entire day in your being, as if they're packed with nostalgia that lingers in Swedish summers. I have many smultronställe. I guess everyone does. Here I share one of mine. I lived only a few minutes walk away from the school I went to. I had no need to take the school bus. End of school was a noisy time when children rushed out of school, and those who lived far were ushered into school buses by class teachers. Each teacher screaming, "Fall in line, fall in line." I must have been around 16. We needed to take extra classes after school to prepare for competitive exams. By the time we left school, all nervous energy had calmed down to the level required to focus on solving physics numericals or trigonometry problems. Add to that the intense heat of late summer in Delhi, there's no way one could be anything but sleepy or reflective. After the class, I packed my bag and headed home, contemplated head towards the ground, because the sun was unrelenting. Suddenly, a stick with a metal bottom tapped in between my shoes and the ground, as if demanding me to stop. Jolted from my reflective state, I looked up as I flicked the right ponytail over my shoulder. I looked up to see my grandfather. He was no taller than I, 5'2". He looked straight into my eyes and gave a lopsided smile that he had acquired in the last year. Then he tipped his head backwards and raised his eyebrows. No words. I knew he was asking me, "What thoughts are you lost in?" A year ago he'd had a stroke. For him to have walked quarter of a kilometer away from home was a big achievement, that too without anyone's assistance. I remember clearly that in a flicker of that moment, when I saw him give me that knowing smile, I felt secure. It was a narrow lane in between two public parks, and it was too hot for anyone to be out at the time. It felt like we were the only two people in the hot boiling universe. My grandfather, whom we affectionately called Papaji, lived with us all of our lives together. Despite nuclear families, it is still common in India for parents to live together with their sons and their families. The security that brought me cannot be described in words. I was not just my parents' child, but also Papaji's granddaughter. What I remember about Papaji is that he read all the time newspapers, magazines, even our textbooks. He loved plants, and that he talked very little. Was it the buried pain of having left his house behind? There was a sentence I deleted. He came from Pakistan to India. I would never know. Sometimes I shared my writing with him, especially the one that I didn't dare to share with my parents. Upon entering college, I encountered a different world and needed to process the new ideas of identity and questioning the status quo infused in us. Strange, because I went to all women college that exclusively taught home economics, focusing on women maintaining a household, albeit with a knowledge of scientific concepts behind homemaking. Impressionable as I was at 18, I wrote a story about a young girl who questions tradition. "What do you think?" I asked Papaji after I shared the story with him. Okay. Okay, what? What was the story about? A girl who's questioning everything. No judgment, no anger. Individual identity, as we are taught in the modern world as freer than collective identity, is a misnomer. A professor in the US began with his class on ethics and technology so lucidly. Folks, you can ask for individual rights only when benefiting from living in a society. Build a cottage in the woods, and people will not care about what you do. My ideas about individual versus society have altered much. To sum it up, although digital communities offer an advantage over real life communities of geographical proximity, they are only a semblance of what communities are supposed to do. Intergenerational connections are nearly impossible in cyberspace. Delhi that I knew does not exist. A city that was filled with houses and with generous front and backyards is now a city of apartments, where the yards have been conjoined to turn the entire ground floor into a parking space for oil guzzling SUVs. The street where we heard squeals of children followed by street vendors inviting their regular customers is now submerged in sounds of TV series that never seem to end. How would they, if in the true fashion of American soap operas, they keep reviving the dead and the lost? No longer can anyone hear the street vendors inside their homes. Yet there is this lane, 2-minute walk away from where I grew up, that evokes my childhood. Although still tree-lined, now on one side the lane is littered with parked cars. The moment I step on it, a rucksack full of memories rush in. Children playing badminton amidst name-calling, ducking an incoming cricket ball. Children in green school uniforms making plans to study or play, trading cards of Hindu gods and cricket players. And a yellow house where every Tuesday there was a kirtan, a sangha of women singing devotional songs for hours. That yellow house is now a 4-story apartment building with a working elevator and little space for children to play. But a few seconds later, at the turn, only a few houses down from where the yellow house was, comes this narrow lane, that lane where Papaji stopped me. It is still intact, pretty much the same way. Maybe because in the middle of the 2 public parks, maybe because every Thursday evening for the last 7 decades, the lane turns into a night market that sells everything under the moon. I clearly remember Papaji's lopsided smile as he tried to raise his walking stick to my left shoulder, poking at the banana curls of a ponytail resting there. We both knew he was showing off his newfound ability, without words. He was exerting his right to stop me midway and question me, with immense love and care, without words. At that moment, on a narrow street, in the middle of 2 public parks, under the scorching Delhi sun, I was home. I knew who I was, I knew where I was going, I had a whole life of possibilities ahead of me, and my paternal grandfather, whose genetic coil I carried, provided a filial shade, without words. With a knowing smile that linked my 16 years to generations of the past and a hopeful future. That was my Smultronställe, only I did not know it. Or maybe I called it by a different name. Kanche, maybe Mango-Stalle. So, what's your Smultronställe, even if you call it by another name? Thank you.